Hello everyone, welcome to Tailwinds Training and Coaching. This is my first recorded video and I'm hoping it can help those who are experiencing this problem. This problem is specifically something I see with seasoned agility dogs. They tend to break their stay, sniff, or do zoomies on the start line. The interesting thing for me is that this type of dog often has excellent stays at other times. They may be multiple titled in other sports, and they may experience different levels of stays at different times. One of the reasons that I like this approach is that it, one, allows you to address the root cause of the problem, and two, it also allows an intermediary step while your dog is still learning that rock solid stay. When you have registered for a class, when you have registered for a seminar, it can be very frustrating to have to go back and reward your dog and work their start line when you have paid possibly hundreds of dollars to work on other skills, especially if your dog's stay is excellent in other locations. When I look at this problem, I look at four distinct factors. One, motion is one of your strongest natural cues, and it's going to tell our dogs to follow or go forward. 2, chest facing forward while moving is a natural cue to, again, go forward. Proximity to agility equipment is also a natural cue to go forward. And rewards tend to occur after equipment, whether that reward is food, toy, petting, verbal, or simply doing the equipment itself. Because your dog is receiving multiple cues, in this case at least 4 cues to go forward, combined with their natural history of moving forward and being rewarded, the dog becomes confused. They are in a contradictory or a dissonant situation because the dog knows it should stay, but the dog, for some reason, whatever that reason may be, does not feel empowered to stay. They are trying to close the gap between the handler and themselves. This could be related to distance, this could be related to a learned behavior, frustration, etc. And the behaviors that I often see with that breaking of the start line, the way it resolves that uncomfortable state is by self-releasing. They will either go forward without permission, they may sniff the ground and disconnect, or they may run around and do zoomies or visit the ring crew. When a dog self-releases, we generally have 2 main choices. One is we go back and reset. That's where we are forcing compliance. And this may be because we just simply know how important a stay can be. Or it could be that we're listening to our coach. Our coach has said you must go back and reward. The dog may perceive that self-releasing causes their handler to return. I call it the summon button. You've told me to stay, I am unhappy with staying, I get up, and it causes you to come back. And handlers will often adapt by slingshotting their dog, having no start line and running faster, or backing up during their start line stay and then trying to turn their body to run the course after having let out maybe 10, 20 feet. Option 2, we just run the course. Sometimes this happens because we're at a trial or a workshop. Sometimes we just simply give up on a good stay. You've been working on it for an extended period of time and you have not seen success. And we can also give up our stay because we find the stay is having the opposite effect that we would desire. The dog may start to sniff or zoomy if we return, or the dog will stay at the start line but then run the rest of the course in a very demotivated way. Sometimes this happens by accident. We didn't perceive it at a critical moment. And sometimes it's something that can happen over time where we've tried to be consistent and we've moved away from that consistency. In this case, the dogs may perceive the start line as negotiable. You're telling me to stay, but I don't always have to stay. Sometimes I do, sometimes we don't. It's a back and forth. And often handlers will adapt. 90% of the time, they can throw away their start line and still be successful. And other times there's about 10 to 15% where the way the course is designed can pose significant handling difficulties, especially if you were working on something like commitment, which requires you to lead forward before releasing your dog. 2 of the most powerful tools we have in our toolbox in this situation are placement of reward and the frequency of the reward. Placement is where you are rewarding your dog. Dogs are naturally going to favor the location most likely to be rewarding. So do we as humans. We don't go to the dryer when we're hungry. We check the fridge or the cupboards because that's where the food is. So if we want our dogs to value staying at the start line, we may need to create value at that start line and reward the start line area itself more, maybe even, than the release to balance that disbalance. The second tool we have in our toolbox is frequency, which is how fast the reward is going to be coming. So if something happens once or infrequently, it's probably a fluke. If it happens rapidly, if it happens often or frequently, it's probably a pattern. Flukes, because they only may happen once, may not even be noticed and are not worth changing a behavior for, whereas a pattern tends to cause more of a change of behavior. So you're going to see a lot of rapid reinforcement in these videos, and this is very, very, very important because by rewarding rapidly, incredibly rapidly, we draw attention to this new pattern. Something is different. Take note. Don't fall into old behaviors. And by virtue of that high reward, we're actually creating value so the dog is more inclined to change a behavior, often a behavior which has been set over a long period of time. In step 1, throw cookies rapidly at a target location. I love using a corner for this because you can be a very sloppy cookie thrower and still have a very good chance that the dog is going to maintain a position. If you are throwing cookies and it slides out and your dog leaves a little bit to go get it, don't worry about it, just restart. You can move incrementally away. The distance here is not important. I would say around 5 feet or whatever is comfortable for you and your dog. The purpose of this exercise is to decouple rewards from your physical proximity to the dog. In this exercise, you also need to remember to stay oriented, facing your dog at this point, because we want to take away one of the cues that your dog may be perceiving that is releasing their start line, that is causing them to self-release. And obviously in this case, if you feel your dog is going to release, or if you've rewarded heavily over a period of a couple seconds, you may release your dog before they self-release. Just a couple do's and don'ts. 1, you're going to want to reward, again, rapidly, very rapidly. You're going to want to reward them before they turn to you. You don't want them to eat the cookie, turn towards you, and then have the cookie be thrown at this point, because then they will think the turning towards you is the desired behavior. That will happen in one of our next steps. And do multiple sessions over several days. This is a great kibble exercise because you're not asking a lot of your dog, so it's still very motivational. Some of the don'ts. Don't wait for them to find it and chew it. Just keep throwing it. Yes, you may have thrown 4 or 5 cookies, but all that's going to result in is a jackpot when your dog finally notices it. Again, don't wait them to look at you, and don't use any verbals yet. You're going to be very inclined to use your wait or your stay. Don't do that yet, only because, again, your dog is going to have a history of executing that behavior within the context of how close you are. So if you ask your dog to sit, most dogs will run 10, 20, 30 feet, however far away they are, and sit directly in front of you. We do not want to combat those verbals yet. Step 2, hopefully you've practiced this over multiple days, and you're going to start noticing your dog looks incredibly relaxed against that wall in that corner. They no longer look like they are rushing to get to you. They no longer look like they are walking off to sniff. It's going to start looking like they are hanging out in that corner. So you're going to do the same steps as step 1. You're going to throw rapidly in the corner, release them before they self-release, do a couple reps. Then you're going to okay your dog, and if they don't come all the way, jackpot them. Around this time, your dog may come a couple feet towards you and then pause or turn back to the wall. If they do that, jackpot. If your dog does come all the way, you are going to go back to step 1. It just means that you may not have done as many reps or they're not quite understanding. Another couple things you are going to do is stack your reward words, your reward tone, and food. So if your dog does something good, you may throw a cookie, maybe you give them their yes. And if they do something amazing, it might be like, yay, good boy, so that your dog can hear the difference. And you can also use multiple rewards as that jackpot. Again, you're going to do multiple sessions over days. This is not something you want to rush. I spend more time on steps 1 and 2 than the other steps combined. Again, at this point, some don'ts. Don't correct your dog. No, no, etc. Verbal corrections at this point can cause your dog to revert into that same frustration state. If your dog comes to you, just throw the cookie where you wish they were. If you think about it from the dog's perspective, why are they going to keep traveling 10 feet back and forth when they can figure out that they can hold that position and receive just as much, if not more, rewards? Again, we're not putting any verbals in yet either. And don't add any motion or other distractions at this point. The goal is you want your dogs relaxed, maybe looking at you, maybe looking at the floor, but without any intent or intensity to come back to you. In step 3, your dog is now hanging out at the wall, observing you from a distance. They should look very comfortable and very relaxed. We are not going to be cueing a sit or down in this step. As I mentioned before, if you cue your dog with a known behavior, a known verbal, they may bridge that gap, coming closer to try and finish executing it. So we are going to add a stop or a halt physical cue without verbals at this point. So you're going to soft release your dog, okay, and before they take a step or two, you're going to whip your hand up like you're going to throw a ball behind them, or stop in the name of the law. Your dog should pause. They may even turn away facing the wall, anticipating the reward. That is exactly what you want. You're going to reward rapidly at the wall, not near you, and again, doing multiple sessions over several days. If they travel part way, you say okay, and they either are so quick that they're almost on you, or if they travel part of the way and then sit, don't worry about it. Reward them where you wish they were. Okay? Yes. So just a little note about the body language when we're asking our dogs to do the distance behavior. If you take your chest and your eyes and you drop them down and hold your signal, your dog will probably come to you. So if you're sitting here, you ask your dog to sit, you ask your dog to down, they're more likely to do it at a distance than if you, because as soon as your chest drops, your dog is going to want to kind of come into this bubble. When you're asking your dog to do their distance work and you're throwing the food, you're saying, okay, and then you're raising your hand up. Same thing. If you go, okay, very slowly, softly, your dog is more likely to come in. So you want to, okay, just kind of like you're going to throw a ball. Stop. In the name of the law. Look behind you. Don't come any closer. You do not have to stomp your foot. If you have a dog who's very sensitive, I would not recommend it. If you have a dog who is not looking up at you, they are only kind of looking waist down, just this little motion and sound can help them realize that something is going on. So it could be as subtle as okay, or it could be as dramatic as okay, just based on you and your dog. And I would go lighter, and then if you are not noticing success, then you can add a little bit on with that ultimate goal that you can, okay, maybe just little, knee motion, and then eventually, okay, this is my cue for stop, okay, which looks very much like this release, okay, just without that extra motion. In step 4, the dog should now halt or pause or may even turn away from you looking for that cookie when you raise your hand. At this point, we can now add additional tricks that the dog knows. And I would always recommend starting with whatever behavior your dog is best at versus the behavior they are weakest at. So it would be, okay, you're going to throw your hand up with that halt or stop cue, and then you can add something your dog is very good at, a sit or a down. And then if they sit or down and they are at a distance from you, you are going to jackpot them verbally with cookies. Make it a thing. Even if they come to you, if you give them your stop cue and they come to you and they sit in front of you or down, you are still going to reward them at the wall. They have completed the sit or down behavior. You do not at this point have your dog understanding the difference between sit at a distance and sit coming. So we do not want to wreck your sitter down by not rewarding them because they did technically sit or down or whatever cue you've asked them to do. Left, right, paw, back up, sit pretty, whatever you have. If you find they are coming to you every time, you may need to take a step back. Go back, rework your steps 1 to 3 before you revisit, and then pepper step 4 in. Don't do it every single time. And remember, at this point in your training, you're going to give them that stop or halt hand signal before every command, because many dogs will start to drift forward. So they sit. As you ask them to down, they come a step forward. You ask them to sit, they come a step forward. So you ask your dog to sit. That is a complete behavior. Throw the cookie behind them. You ask your dog to down and they down. That is a complete behavior. Throw the cookie behind them. Don't focus on stand. So stand to me is when your dog is in a standing up position. It's generally harder. Most dogs will go from a sit or from a down and they will tend to take a step forward. This is something that if your dog is good at, absolutely throw in, but you're going to get your stand as a virtue of your halt signal usually. And we don't want to focus on their perfection of their distance behavior when what we're really working on is just them being away at this point. So if you notice your dog is not good at something, maybe they can't do left and right at a distance, don't work on it at this point yet. We are not doing criteria stacking. All right, do you want to show the difference using some verbals? Sit. Yeah, sit. That's okay. Sit. So what he is demonstrating right now is that he, when under pressure, he doesn't understand the verbal as much. He does understand the verbal, but not at a distance. So I will come up and I will show the difference. You ready? Can you sit? Good. Get down. You're fun. You're knocking it down. Very nice. I want to ask at a distance. It can be a little hard. Can you sit? Sit. That's okay. So he's saying I can't do verbals at a distance, which is a normal phase. That's what he's going through. But if I use my hand signals, you funny. If I use my hand signals, he will listen better. You see, he can't, yes, pay attention until he's looking at me, which also makes him key into what I'm doing. Nice. And in step 5, we are decoupling our motion while facing our dogs. This is where we start to look like the crazy agility people we are, dancing back and forth while our dog is holding position. So you're going to throw your cookie in that same reward spot, and you're going to start throwing cookies while moving. You're going to walk towards your dog, backwards, left, right, north, south, all while facing your chest towards your dog. Step 6 is almost exactly the same as step 5. Yes. Step 6 is almost exactly the same as step 5. Except you're just decoupling your motion and your direction. You can spin in circles, do jumping jacks, face away, come back and forward, dance side to side. You are basically telling your dog, my motion is not relevant in this context. Please continue to hold your behavior. And again, you are simply using your rate of reinforcement, your placement of reinforcement, to make sure that your dog values holding their position. Yes. And at this point, you are still not using your agility equipment because that may set them over the edge. Practice this for a little bit before you introduce your dog's agility equipment. Step 7, probably going to be very self-explanatory. You're going to put up a piece of equipment. A jump is a really good option because you can throw the cookies and not risk your dog trying to go into the tunnel for the cookie, etc. So you're going to set up a jump, put it in the same corner where your dog was, and you're going to repeat steps 1 to 6, which is decoupling the rewards from your proximity, just simply throwing cookies at the wall. Then over the course of either that same session, if your dog is very successful, or over the course of a couple, if your dog is not, you're going to start pausing your reward and seeing if your dog will offer you an automatic hold. There's only one piece of agility equipment. Remember this. Don't try and practice it as the first obstacle on a line. That would be a later step. Then you're going to add that stop, halt, physical cue. You can add tricks, so your dog is sitting, downing, standing in front of the jump. And then you can start adding your motion into that, facing your dog at first and then wandering around, being silly, proofing. Your dog is now in this step taking the foundational understanding of holding position at a distance and pairing it with all of their agility knowledge. If your dog breaks at this point, you haven't officially told them to stay. So it may mean that you have delayed your reward a little bit too long, or it may mean that your dog just took the jump. And that's okay, because taking the jump is a reward, but I would not reward them for taking the jump. So I've thrown a bunch of cookies. My dog has been great. They were working at a distance, and my dog releases over the jump towards me. It's just information that I either didn't release them before they made that choice, or my rewards may have been a little bit slow. All we are doing at this point is making sure that our dog understands that the start line is just as, if not more, rewarding than the agility itself. This will not ruin your dog, but we may need to, as you continue, balance this. If you stop rewarding your start line completely, your dog may experience extinction, meaning they will completely throw away everything they learned because clearly it doesn't work with agility equipment. And if we only rewarded the start line forever, our dogs may not want to release because the start line is even better than releasing. So you're going to balance those options by how comfortable your dog is leading out. If your dog becomes very comfortable with you leading out, you can reward them more for being released. If your dog is a little tense, if they're a little frustrated, you can throw that cookie at the start line to remind them that that start line is a rewarding place. We'll see if I can replicate some of this with a non-dog animal. Now, ferrets tend to run away when they've received their cookie to store it. The cookie. You can see May still understands that food comes from my hand, which is where your dog may be. My dogs are not at that point. And it gosh, don't touch me. How rude! How rude! Yes, good girl. Again, ferrets run away, which makes this training a little slower. We'll probably fast forward these reps. Hello. Okay. Where's my girl? There she is. Yes. 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 So you can just see rewarding away from you, just teaching her, hey, cookies can come from somewhere other than my hand. Yes. Okay. No touch. Boop. Yes. Yeah, good girl. Good girl. Just adding some verbals. There's about 4 cookies there. I'm not going to go pick those up. I'm going to let her jackpot herself. Good girl. Yes. You'll notice I'm marking yes before she comes back. Is she eating? Yes. I'm basically marking her eating and being away from me. I'm throwing a cookie, yes, to create the situation so that I can mark it, so that I can reward. Hello, you came to say hello, which is not invalid. I've been working on connection work with her. Well, come here, one touch. Yes, good girl. Parents also have very poor eyesight. Good girl. She doesn't know any tricks. Just teaching her to stay at the wall away from me. Yes. Good girl. Yes, good girl. Yes. She went back to the reward location. That is exactly the game you're playing. Hello, yes. She made some eye contact with girl. So even though she's trying to connect with me by looking up, I'm trying to say thank you for that connection. You will be rewarded at the wall. So this is the first session I've ever done with her with this exercise. And you can see she's already picking up on this concept of, hey, I go to the wall, I get a cookie. That I'm missing some of my guess markers because I'm talking. I can't do two things at once, apparently. Hello? Yes. I marked her being on the way to it.